Okay, great. We are live. Thank you so much for being here with us tonight, everybody. As always, if you're watching on YouTube, we really appreciate your participation and your engagement. So I will kick things off tonight. I just wanted to first thank everyone again. The gratitude that we feel for everyone who participated in the first round of meetings, all our volunteers who are helping to get the word out. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you to everybody who's putting in so much time and effort into this project. So what's going on right now with public outreach is we have a informational campaign that is live. We've got our Facebook account, we've got our webpage, and the outreach teams have been very active over the past couple weeks, spreading around these 3 informational flyers on social media, emails, and as of today, there are paper flyers across every hamlet and more going up this week. And so the flyers basically are answering the questions: what is a comprehensive plan? Why are we updating Lewisboro's? And how can you get involved? So we're just taking this moment in March before we have any information ready to share about the next round of meetings to get people involved and sort of spread those baseline communication messages that can get lost when we're trying to communicate all the other info about upcoming meetings. So that's the update there. Let's see. I also just wanted to frame our discussion for tonight. I was hoping everybody would be here by now, but I will go ahead. I can be a little brief and then I can always circle back to this later. So tonight, the main focus is Valerie will be sharing the work that she and her team at MPV have done to translate all of the input from round 1 of our public process into a vision statement and actionable goals and objectives. And in addition to the input from the in-person meetings, the virtual meetings and the virtual survey, Valerie and her team also incorporated feedback from their meetings with individual town committees, councils, and boards. So her team also compared all of this input to information from the existing conditions study and work that has already been undertaken by the community or is currently in process. So there's a lot of really good research, time, and effort that went into these drafts that we're going to look at tonight. So I just want to highlight that our job, this group assembled here, our job tonight and between now and the next round of meetings is to review the draft vision statement and the draft goals and objectives with a focus on answering the following questions. Are these clear and accessible? For example, are they written in plain language? Are there any specific terms, concepts, jargon that need to be more clearly defined? Are these engaging? Is there enough high-level information to draw folks in? Is the format user-friendly? And then also, just a heads up, these will be posted on our website well in advance of the next round of meetings. So we also want to think about what context and information do we need to communicate along with these postings so that everybody is clear on what we're asking from the community and what they should do to prepare for the upcoming meetings. So we're not going to be able to answer all of these questions tonight. So we can start talking about them now, give Valerie some feedback over email between now and the next meeting, and then we can finalize everything at the next meeting and post it publicly. One thing I do just want to highlight here, our job is not to assess the content of these drafts or suggest content changes. So if you have opinions about a specific content item or feel something is missing from the draft, I'm asking that you write it down now and then provide it during the next round of public meetings along with the rest of the community. So tonight we're just going to be focusing on answering those questions about are these clear and accessible, engaging, and user-friendly? Okay, so I'll just wrap up by saying ultimately our goal is to keep this process as engaging and accessible to the community as possible. And with that, I'm going to pass it over to Valerie I'm happy to do screen sharing, Valerie, to make your life a little easier. But I'll pass the microphone over to you now.
Okay, great. Thank you. I think Katie, you'll just need to, I have a couple documents that for screen sharing, but you can just sort of keep me on time as to when we need to move to the next topic. That'd be great.
Okay.
Okay, so first, a couple things I just wanted to bring to your attention. What we did provide you was, we'll start off with the vision statement. A vision statement in any comprehensive plan is really basically that. It really is supposed to be aspirational principles in which you're trying to strive to. So it's not meant to be detailed. It's not meant to be, and it's also not meant to be all exhaustive. It's really supposed to focus on, you know, some of the key points that you're trying to raise within the comprehensive plan. The vision statement itself should be supported by all your goals and objectives. So the vision statement should reflect, when you read the goals and objectives, those aspirational principles throughout the actual plan itself. So I wanted to start with the vision statement, and I can share my screen. And again, what we're looking for in terms of feedback for this is going to be clearly put out to the general public. And we're also going to be taking comments on that on the next round of workshops. A couple things we just wanted to highlight that we made sure we emphasized in this vision statement. Are you sharing, Katie? Oh, okay.
Sorry, I just took over because I added the taglines that you came up with.
Sure, I also had those too. Sure, but so we can start off with, let's talk about the vision statement, and then we can talk about the taglines. So the vision statement itself, we wanted to make sure we highlighted the hamlets. We also wanted to make sure we highlighted the lakes, also the natural resources, the ecological sustainability within the concerns within the town, and then also the community growth as the town evolves, that it also maintains its character and the characteristics that have been something that's very important to the community. We also wanted to bring in this concept of connectivity, because that is something that we heard loud and clear, whether it's through connections of actual trail networks, sidewalks, whether it's connections between the different hamlets, and also just connections in terms of technology. So we wanted to bring that concept in. Sustainability was another concept that was really important. And then one of the other things that, and climate resiliency, but the other thing too, we also wanted to make sure that it's clear that the town of Lewisboro and everything that it does for all and everybody within the town, and does it in looks at it from town-wide focus and moving the town forward collectively. So that's really kind of the concept that we brought in. And this is, I believe that our vision statement was sort of brings all those different elements together. So again, I'm happy to open up the floor if anybody has any comments on the vision statement. If there are things that seem, as Katie mentioned, that needs to be tweaked, if you felt that something really that you heard throughout your communications with the community that you felt that was missing, I'm happy to listen to hear that as well. And we don't have to make any final decisions on the vision statement tonight, but we would like to have those finalized by next meeting, so that way we are able to post it for the public to start reviewing.
And just to finesse that a little bit, so let's keep our discussion tonight, since we do have limited time, and keeping in mind our role here. Let's keep comments to those two categories. You know, is this clear and accessible? Are there terms that aren't clear that need to be better defined? Is this user friendly? Is it engaging? Those kind of questions. I see Dan has his hand raised. Anyone from the steering committee want to jump in first? Okay, Charlene. We'll get to you, Dan. Thank you. Go ahead, Charlene. Oh, you're still muted. Hit it again. There you go.
Okay. I have two definitional things that I think that someone else brought it up, but I'm going to bring them up too. Semi-rural, if we can sort of explain it as maybe attributes of both commercial, suburban and rural communities rather than semi-rural. I think it'd be clearer. And also, I don't know what we mean by equitable.
Yes, so I can talk about that. So equitable is in broad sense just that. So one of the things that we wanted to make sure is that as we approach this comprehensive plan, that all policies that get adopted through this comprehensive plan are equally applied throughout the entire town of Lewisboro. One of the things that we heard loud and clear when talking to many people from other different hamlet areas, some people felt that their hamlet was treated a little bit differently than other hamlets, or that some hamlets are not, are not the focus of town government versus other hamlets. And so one of the things that we wanted to make sure that it's clear is that as these policies get adopted, that they're considered more town-wide policies, and that they would be equally applied throughout the entire town and not just in very specific areas within the town or very specific, hamlets.
Yeah, I think maybe a short explanation of that, because equitable, I know what equitable means, but what do we mean by it when it pertains to the comprehensive plan?
Sure. So I think in terms of, because the vision statement.
I think you answered the question. We just need to work it into the vision statement potentially.
Yeah. So we can kind of bring the concepts of the hamlets into that sentence.
Okay, thank you.
The town. Sure.
And the semi-rural will work with the. Thank you.
Yeah, we'll add. I have notes. We'll add like suburban and rural community character.
Okay. Before Jan, anyone else from the steering committee? Okay. I know Jan and Dan wanted to say something really quick. I'm just going to jump in and say that I think if there's a way we can make this more dynamic, like bullet points maybe, and make it more clear that like this first section is sort of more talking about like where we are now. And then the second section is where it starts to move into where we want to go into the future. If there is some way to visually delineate those a little bit more. Yeah, so just some creative formatting, bullet points, sharpen it up a little bit. So otherwise you're looking at a lot of text and it can seem like a little overwhelming to get through reading everything.
Yep.
John? Oh, you're on mute.
I'm a little struggling with climate resiliency.
Okay.
I think that covers a lot of ground, and
it does. I don't know and it does that on purpose because climate resiliency it can run the gamut of stormwater. It can run the gamut of basically your ecological sustainability, greenhouse gases. So there are a lot of goals and objectives within the comprehensive plan that kind of speak towards climate resiliency. So that's why we use the word in a more, we added it there, we added it in a more general term. I mean, if you just want to talk about, is it the word climate that's of concern? I mean, we can remove that and focus on like resiliency, but it's meant to be a very general term in this.
Yeah, I would say that we want to talk about resiliency across the board and not just climate. Climate resiliency brings up the idea of power outages and things like that. And I think what we really want to say is a broader resiliency.
Okay.
I'm having a hard time even finding where it says that.
It's in like close to the third line up from the bottom. Incorporating renewable energy alternatives and climate resiliency initiatives.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, maybe just resiliency, because the plan, goals do deal with all different kinds of resiliency.
Right.
Not just climate, as you said. Okay, Mark.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah.
So, yeah, just to repeat, I guess, Charlene's comment, just so I can get my head around it. So the last sentence,
Yes.
continue to work towards becoming a more equitable and inclusive place for all,
Yes.
is very aspirational. And no one should deny that. However, I think it can be interpreted several ways and somewhat politically, and suggests a deficiency. Just to dialogue this out, just to play it out, one could say that we're going to work to become more equitable, suggesting that we're not equitable or that we're not inclusive. And I'm just wondering, just to talk it through, what are the standards that we're trying to address there? And is that in our purview? Not that I'm against any of it, but I just sort of wanted to flesh that out a little.
Sure. So, I mean, I think again, the town has made great strides in a lot of if you actually look at the committees that you have versus other communities in terms of making, opening up doors for all to express concerns or issues or even move or celebrate different groups within the town. So we wanted to highlight, that was sort of what we were thinking of. You already are moving things forward in terms of trying to do more broadband, right, townwide, or looking at other issues townwide. And so we were just trying to say, you're doing great things, and now we're saying that the town should continue moving in that direction. So we can tweak that a little bit if you feel that, that sentence structure really reflects something that you're underachieving something, but in all reality, we're saying you have a great framework and you want to continue moving forward in that direction.
I think that captures what Mark was saying well. Yep, nodding head. Okay. Oh, Larry, go ahead. And then we do have to move to Dan and
I just
Dan.
want to clarify, Valerie, something that you said, and maybe for me, but maybe for anybody else that's listening that's not part of the committee, that last statement that you made, it's not that you want the town to be more equitable or inclusive, but it's something that came up. My understanding is this and all of the goals and objectives are things that have come up out of the public meeting in the survey. Can you just clarify that?
Yes. Yes, that is correct. So everything that we have put forth has come from either the town boards and committees, the public surveys, the virtual meetings, what we heard when people were talking about different issues. And so what we really just tried to do is capture, these concepts in words, right? And so that's why we chose equitable and inclusive, because of the fact that there are so many initiatives in the town that are trying to bring together everybody within the town and then move it, this is a town comprehensive plan, moving the whole entire town forward and not just certain components of the town or certain people of the town.
Thank you. Dan, you don't have your hand raised anymore. You're good?
Yeah, it was just a semi-rural thing.
Okay, cool. Jan, go ahead.
So, first of all, I do want to say I had to look up semi-rural, and it really bugged me because it's sort of a little bit of, I think there's a little pejorative thing there, because if you talk about somebody having a semi-truthful statement or something, so I want to echo that. I also wanted to say, I understand a lot more now about equitable, and I have heard things about making sure that all policies apply townwide. I like that so much more. I do have that same kind of quibble with continue to work towards, this is a vision statement. So I kind of almost feel like the town will be equitable and inclusive, as opposed, and that gets, I mean, something I agree with Mark's point about that implies, it talks about where we are today. And I think, so that the other thing I just want to mention, Valerie, when you started off and you talked about connectivity, and how connectivity was such a theme between, you know, not only technology, which I think is what's here, but, you know, connecting parks and connecting to nature and connecting communities and connecting. I thought that I might be getting not into what's clear and what's not, but the way you talked about it, I don't think is reflected as much in this statement. So just wanted to bring that up.
So I wrote down working in the themes from the possible taglines throughout. So the taglines were the result of me saying to Valerie, is there some way we can get one sentence or some headline or something to pull people in? And that's what her team came up with. So yeah, I think weaving those in throughout a little bit, or maybe they're like their headlines or bold or italics or something to go along with like visually punching it up and making it draw people in more and be more engaged.
Right. So in the first two, we use the word connectivity in both the first and second sentence of in the next 10 years. We have in the next 10 years, Lewisboro will maintain its rural and open character while evolving to increase connectivity in a sense of place within the hamlets. And the town will strive to improve connectivity by expanding its multimodal transportation and technology infrastructure. So
I think maybe, I'm sorry, but connectivity to me almost sounds like technology. Whereas if you say improve connections or that, I might be dancing on the head of a pin, but sort of connections and connectivity sounds very technical to me. Maybe that's just my bias, but it does sound broadband and maybe roads or something, but mostly broadband. Whereas connections and community, I think, were the words that I heard when you talked about connectivity.
Okay.
You know, just
okay.
That's helpful.
Dan, and then I think we do need to move on to the next topic just to keep it moving. Just the beginning here.
Yeah, if we're just talking language, then maybe even multimodal. I think everybody on this call probably knows what it means, but maybe a lot of people might not realize that, you know, that could include
where is that? Oh yeah, perfect.
Could include the bike paths and, you know, so the sense, ultimately it's about sort of the physical infrastructure supporting both people's sort of day-to-day needs in an efficient way, but also facilitating like social connection too. So somehow weaving that all together in plain everyday language.
Thank you. I hadn't even seen that in there. When you said it, I was like, what? I'm sure that's not a common phrase people use in everyday language. Okay, John, and then we do have to move on.
Yeah, to Jan's point, I think we have two different concepts here with connectivity, and I think they're both important. So if there's a way to clarify that, I think we do want to have this, you know, the technology connectivity, but I think we also want to have the connectivity between the different hamlets and towns and stuff. And I think we need to make it clear that we really need to have both.
That's important because I don't think of them as separate, but technically they are. So if there's maybe a different word we can use for the technology.
Yeah, I think you go about them separately. So,
Okay.
You know, one of them you do with wires and one of them you do with trails in a sense.
Okay, we're giving you lots of good stuff to think about, Valerie.
Yeah.
I don't doubt your team can handle it. No problem.
No,
Okay.
and I think these are, a lot of this is tweaking. I'm glad to see that just generally that everyone is comfortable with like the concepts put out there. So.
Well, that's what we're relying on you to do, is take what you've heard from the public and translate it into the actual content. And that's why I said up front, and I'll say again before we move to the goals and objectives, that it's not our job to comment on the content itself, that it's our job to and we can do that as individuals through the public meetings, just like everybody else, I should add. But it's our job to figure out, is this engaging? Is it user-friendly? How does it draw people in? And I think we've done a really good job of tackling that with this. and we can do some more workshopping as Valerie. It'll be an iterative process. You know, Valerie will go back, work on it with her team, bring the next version, and we'll do the same thing over.
Yeah, and I think I can probably send you an email you the next version so that maybe people can weigh in between now and also the April meeting.
Absolutely. Okay, so in the interest of time, we have to move on to the goals and objectives. So I'm
Can
gonna,
we just talk about the taglines though, to
Oh,
see
yeah.
if there's one particular, so we wanted to kind of, and Katie had a really good idea, and we typically try to do this in a lot of our comprehensive plans, is kind of come up with on a tagline or brand, like what do we want to say, you know, in a few simple words about what really captures the comprehensive plan. And so we had a couple different, we have two different options. Now, again, we're happy to tweak anything, but we had 6 hamlets, 1 town, Lewisboro's journey to increase connectivity and long-term sustainability, and then Lewisboro growing in connectivity to its community, environment, and each other.
can we sit on that for a bit? I don't think we're going to be able to come up with an answer tonight. Actually, I would challenge you and your team, Valerie. These are such a great start, but I think based on what we talked about tonight, there's a couple words in there that tie back to some of the other comments. So let's see if you and your team can sort of finesse the vision statement and then finesse the tagline accordingly so they match up.
Sure. I think the one question that I had though is what I think if there's bullet like 1 or 2, if one stands out a little bit more than the other, then we can finesse one of them to kind of bring in some of those other concepts that we talked about tonight. I don't know if anybody had a thought.
In the interest of time, I just kind of want to take everybody's temperature. The first bullet, hold up one finger. Second bullet point, hold up 2 fingers. I'll show you them again. Oh, you don't need to see them again. You're all ready to go. Okay.
Do you want us to vote on these? I'm not sure what you're.
I'm just curious, like initial reaction, do you like the first one or the second one better?
Yeah,
And
that's all I want, just initial reaction.
Visually easy to see.
Can you
1 or
repeat the
2?
second one?
I'm gonna share again.
I got the 6 hamlets.
6 hamlets, 1 town, Lewisboro growing in connectivity. Okay, I'll stop sharing so we can see you, everybody. Anybody have got reactions, 1 or 2? Wait, I'm
All right,
okay.
so that's easy.
2.
Yeah,
Easy
so
two.
that's perfect. So I'll go and I'll play around with a couple different concepts of 2 and then bring that back. So,
Okay.
If we have time at the end, it might be good to circle back because the goals and
we can.
objectives might lead us in a different direction.
Mm-hmm. Dan, are you okay holding your to the end? Okay. All right, let's move on so we stay on track here. All right, goals and objectives. If you don't mind, I'm just going to do the same sharing thing, Valerie, so I can take notes directly on it. Everybody can see what we're talking about. So I just want to kick things off here in terms of like formatting and making this a little bit more user friendly. I'm hoping that we can take the goal, like see how there's goal number 1 and then there's sub goals. I'm hoping we can create like a first page that just has the top line goals and that they can be color coded. Like goal number 1 is green. And then when you scroll down and start looking at everything, it matches and it's green. So there's like a good landing page for everybody to see all the goals all at once. And then they can keep scrolling through to see the details and there's something visually to tie it all together.
Okay.
Okay, I gotta make it a little bigger. Starting with the steering committee. So again, we're answering the questions. Is it user friendly? Is it engaging? I don't think we have time tonight to actually go through all of it and talk about terms and what needs to be defined. I think there's probably a fair amount throughout that maybe we need like a glossary.
So I think, right, so let's talk about this, because keep in mind that these are kind of draft goals and objectives. And ultimately in the comprehensive plan, the comprehensive plan is going to include like an explanation and information of each one of the goals and objectives, as well as specific implementation projects based upon the input we receive on the second workshops. So really in terms of like going out to the public and getting them to review some of this, like some things are going to be defined more once we have the explanations. But this is just an initial of, okay, public, this is what we're thinking. What are your thoughts? So we can provide if for some reason there is a particular term that we feel that is, that we really need to define like now for the public to understand. But I think in terms of, just general explanation as to what, like, for example, if we're talking about, I don't know, let's say, for example, we're talking about a particular law or a particular, agency, there would be an explanation in the comprehensive plan as to what that agency really means, or like for example, LWR, local waterfront revitalization plan, there will be an explanation to that. But it just won't be now when it goes out to the public, unless for some reason we have to start doing that work, but then we would need more time because there is definitely going to be time spent on like the details of those goals and objectives.
It's a really good point. It's tricky because we're making this publicly available before the meetings.
Yes.
So we don't want people to kind of get lost or confused.
Right, but we also, one of the things that we didn't want to put a lot of detail in there because we really want the public to understand that we want to hear what how they interpret these goals, right? Or what they think about some of these, and some of them might be beyond maybe what the public really fully so it might be beyond what, like, for example, if you're not privy or don't really understand the zoning, right, or have never really looked at a zoning chapter, you might not understand what bulk regulations are, and that's okay, but they will understand what the goal is, right? We just wanted to show the committee, I mean, we could even go in with just general goals, but I know this committee and basically what I've experienced so far is that the public really wants to know details, right? They're happy with, and I just don't want to go in with just broad goals and then people say, yes, but tell me about the details. So these are the details that kind of are supporting these broad goals.
Mm-hmm.
That being said, I don't anticipate the public to understand absolutely every one of our objectives.
Mm-hmm. So I think that goes to the third question. So it's terms, jargon, user friendly, but then what do we want to communicate alongside this? So right. I think when we do make it public, we have to release exactly that, like a little how to use this, like how do you prepare for the public meeting, and sort of explain that that the goal is this sort of broader, and then we dig down, but bring your questions about terms, bring your interpretation of what this means to you. Like we'll have to workshop that. So maybe Valerie, if you and your team can sort of start writing that down, that way we can review that between this meeting and next too. So I think we have to frame it up for people so they know what we're asking of them.
Right, absolutely.
Any other comments, starting with committee members, like formatting? Did I get nodding heads on like the idea of having a front page that just has the top level goals? Does that sound good to everybody? Kind of, maybe not. Go ahead. Or if you have any other ideas, that'd be great.
I think it's a good idea because I think people are going to get bogged down in the details of each of these, and they probably won't get down the list before they lose it. So
yeah,
I think
it's hard for anybody to get through it. It's a lot. So
yeah.
An executive summary, essentially.
Yeah.
I like it because it's like a table of contents,
Mhm.
you know, so if people
Yes.
are, some people are going to be interested only in a couple of things, they're not interested in all the things. So,
Right.
you know, the color coding, like I'm a big fan of like notebooks, you know, tabs. I like organization. So I think it's kind of like a table of contents. It allows people to go to it and say, okay, you know, I'm interested in goal number 1. Let me see what the rest of it is on that. And they'll be able to thumb through it and find the sections that they want to focus on. So I like the idea.
Yeah, and it just for our own review of it, I started going through all the details, and I bogged down right away. I mean, I looked at goal number 2, and then I looked at the detail underneath of them, and I said they don't match up. So I'm stuck right there.
Mm.
Well, so I think, I mean, that's important if you feel that something doesn't match up, and then maybe we can talk about.
Yeah, well, you have a goal about future visions and all that stuff, and the first 4 things are housekeeping.
Mm.
Yes, well, but for example, so update zoning to accommodate Lewisboro's changing needs and goals. Housekeeping is a major issue when it deals with upkeep. So for example, something simple as the definitions in your zoning code. If you don't update the definitions in your zoning code, you'll find that technology runs away and you have old antiquated terminology or definitions that no longer are applicable today. So there's a lot of, and that's the thing, there are a number of things that in terms of housekeeping are very important in order to move the town forward.
Yeah, I guess what I would say is they are important, but I would put them at the end, not at the beginning. And I would put the stuff that's visionary in the future, which is consistent with goal number 2 at the top.
That sounds like a good way to make it a little bit more engaging to everybody reading it, is the more future looking stuff up front. All right, I'm writing that down. That's super helpful. That's exactly the kind of thing we should be digging into. And so other comments about that, how to make it more engaging, how to make it easier to get through?
Yeah, I have a question for Valerie based on the input that you received. Because as a member of the steering committee, I was thinking that we were, as a committee and as a community, that we are engaged in a process to update the comp plan versus throwing it out and start a new comp plan. And I think that goes back to John's comment on the housekeeping. I think a lot of this, it is housekeeping. It's looking at what the comp plan says and what needs to change to meet the current communities and towns, residents and businesses' desires. Can you just like comment on like the overall process? Is it an update, or were there calls from the community for a whole new comp plan and a different type of plan? Like, it seems like it's more of an update than anything else.
So no, an update. So technically, once you have a comprehensive plan, right? There's a couple different. There's a comp plan. You can amend your comp plan, which basically you're saying you're taking the document you have now and you're just adding a few sections to it, and the document stands. An update to the comprehensive plan is saying, okay, the comprehensive plan we had before needs to be completely updated, and the new comprehensive plan that gets adopted is your updated comprehensive plan. So that is what you're undertaking. For example, like in the other comprehensive plan, it only focused on some of your hamlet areas, not all of your hamlet areas, right? It didn't really even touch upon some of your hamlets. The old comprehensive plan was from the data and everything's from back from 1985. So it's now at this point, you're updating the comprehensive plan. So it is going to have new goals, new objectives, but we looked at your current comprehensive plan and brought in some of those goals and objectives into the new goals and objectives. So for example, there was a big emphasis on the hamlets, the hamlet downtowns, and the community character. And a lot of that has been brought in. But there were, like, for example, there's a whole section in your current comprehensive plan where it talks about the special character overlay districts. So we're advising, take a look at those again, right? Keep those, take a look at those and see if you can move those forward in terms of, do you need to expand them? Are they clear? do you want to add some architectural guidelines? Do you want to add some more protections to those? So those are the things where we said, yes, this still applies. And now we're suggesting you should do some additional work on those elements.
Okay, yeah, that makes it more clear. I was just adding to what John said, because I look at goal 2 and the subsections under goal 2, it's update, review. So it does
Yes.
seem like yeah, a lot of it, I mean, I don't want to call it housekeeping because it's all very important, but it really is looking at what we have and comparing it to current residents and people who live and work in Lewisboro, what their desires are, and making sure that the plan that we have now evolves to reflect the current needs and desires of the community.
Yes, and I think that's what we're hoping to also get from the second round of workshops is that, when somebody sees the goal of, for example, update zoning to accommodate Lewisboro's changing needs and goals, and we talk about, for example, review permitted special permit and accessory uses. Well, for example, reviewing, even though it sounds like review the permitted special permit accessory uses, but you could go from having a particular zone that permits, let's say, only business, and then you change it to allow for mixed use, right? So that in itself is potentially, and where we would be describing in the part of the explanation in the comprehensive plan would kind of outline if for some reason we start hearing from the public, like this area needs to be looked at in terms of what's permitted, or this area needs to be looked at in terms of its accessory uses. I have like 2 or 3 pages from the planning board of various issues that have come up, and the zoning board has also provided information. So some of those details will make it into the overall text of the comprehensive plan, highlighting a little bit more detail as to some of the issues that we're talking about.
So maybe that is useful context. A paragraph of kind of explaining that concept could go into the guide that we post with this,
Yeah,
context for reading this. I think that would be
Yeah.
really helpful.
absolutely.
Okay, so any other comments along this line of thinking of how to make sure that when people look at this document, they don't get overwhelmed and do read it and think about what it means to them, like other tools we can use to help facilitate good engagement with the document?
Well, maybe you talked a little bit about the front piece, sort of having a little bit, I mean, to me, having looked at some other comprehensive plans, this is what I expect, but I could see that other people, if you've never seen a comprehensive plan, you might not expect this. So maybe, maybe even just sort of, I mean, we've talked about the big process, so we get community input and we, but maybe talking about, the goals and objectives will then end up in a change to the zoning code, to the town's code, and it will be adopted, and sort of, I mean, talk through that aspect of it in a paragraph as well, I think would, because people might not expect to see this kind of layout and to say, this is exactly how you bring it. And by the time we finish, we're going to have more maps and we're going to have more, illustrations. But right now, this is what we're capturing, so that I think it gives some perspective, because you talked about that introductory thing that might help.
Yeah, sure, absolutely, that's a good idea.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I know we won't have time to go through every one of these things. I'm kind of wondering if we see something where there's a superfluous, an extra word or things that seem a little bit wordy and they could be a little punchier. Does it make sense what's the best way to do that? To send Katie you a note with that, or to amend it on the document?
Yeah, you can comment on the Google document. I made it so it's comment only.
Yeah.
So yeah, just add a comment and say plain language is what we're going for. Like
Right.
the more extra words, it can be confusing, and we want to strive towards plain language as an accessibility feature,
Okay.
but also because it's nice and it is more engaging. How about because we don't have time to go through all the goals and objectives, but it is in the Google document folder. So you can all go through and add your comments. Again, on the sort of format and how it's presenting to the public. Comments on the actual content will be saved for the public meeting series. And sort of themes, I think also, so when we circle back to the vision statement, maybe we then can get our wheels turning, like, are we using the same words throughout, like the themes that are identified in the vision statement? Are they flowing through the full document to just make sure that it feels cohesive and that, you can kind of pick out themes? So I think people like to have high level stuff they can grab onto that then they can see throughout. It feels more cohesive. But with that, we can always come back to it later. But I think one thing we want to save a lot of time for is the discussion about the format of the next round of meetings, like the content that Valerie will be, the content and the sort of format for how people will be engaging with the material. And this is all tied together. Is that okay if we move on to that, Valerie?
Oh, yeah, that's fine.
Okay, so I'm going to share that document too. The station ideas document. Okay, so let's skip the logistics stuff because we can come back to that between meetings. So I'll just let you walk us through what we're looking at, Valerie.
Okay, so what we'd like to do is, and this again is based on the comprehensive plan goals and objectives. So we're proposing 4 different stations. The first station would be the vision statement. So we were going to basically have a vision statement along with some Hamlet maps. And when I say Hamlet maps, I think the concept is we're going to have 4 different, we're having 4 different meetings with 2 Hamlets represented at each meeting, both, 4 different days of meetings. So we have a Saturday, which will be for both Golden's Bridge and the Cross River would be at 1 in the morning, and then we'd have the same session in the afternoon. Another Saturday would have South Salem and Wacabuck, which would again have a morning and afternoon sessions in 2 different locations. Lewisboro and Vista would be another Saturday morning and afternoon. And then we're going to have one Sunday evening, which is all of Lewisboro. So we will have like maps, the same maps would be in display for that one for all of the Hamlet areas. So the plan is at the very first station, it really is going to be almost, we won't have somebody necessarily there at that particular station. It's really just going to be, here's some maps, and then here's your vision. And we were looking for comments on the vision statement. So that is going to be similar to what you saw last time with the Post-it notes. It's that way people can say, I like this, I don't like this, you need to add this, I have concerns. So that's really at the first station. Then at station 2, 3, and 4, they're all going to be the same exact exercise. They're all going to have a facilitator. And this is where we tried to work up this concept of having a little bit more of like that group conversation. And so we're planning to have in each one of those, we'll have the goals and objectives. And since there's, as you said, there's many of these goals and there's many goals and objectives. So we're going to break them down by different categories. So for example, like we have land use, I think. So for example, like the first 2, there's land use and zoning, housing and economic development, which I think lends itself very nicely with each other, right? Then we have another topic area, natural resources, climate change, sustainability, which I think also lends itself as a nice kind of connection. And then we have infrastructure, community services, and facilities, as well as transportation and mobility. So we'll probably combine those together. And so this way, at those, it's almost like themed tables. And at those individual tables, we'll have somebody there. We will have the copy of the goals and objectives. So we're going to ask people again, what their thoughts are. Do they agree with the wording? If not, like, how can they be approved? Are we missing goals or grouping too many ideas into one goal? We're also going to ask questions like similar as like, is an objective missing for a goal? And we're also going to ask participants to look at these goals and objectives and see how their particular hamlet can make the goals and objectives reality in the next 10 years. So what are some ideas or thoughts that they have? And so we're looking for then, we were thinking of having maps on the individual, like on the tables, and actually have people like draw on the maps to say, like, in this particular area, like, this is what we need. And we got a lot of that information. We got a decent amount of the information from the first round, but now we'll be drilling a little bit more in depth. And that way people can really start identifying very particular areas or particular needs of their hamlet. And so the thought was to have people then draw on the maps and write what exactly their concerns are, or what they can potentially, what in that hamlet area can support those different goals and objectives. And then they would go on to the next station.
Okay, let's pause for questions. Andrea, go ahead.
So, I mean, I understand the concept, but like, we know that this isn't a like, you come and you have to be there for the whole thing, right? We've kind of promoted the fact that you can come in at different times. So my concern is, what if people have different visions and they don't like what they saw previously added to a particular map, and they change it or they remove it? Like, how are we handling that? Because we talk about discussion, but then if different people come at different times, they're obviously not having a discussion together, which is one of the benefits of the virtual meetings, is that we were in the groups, we're all having a discussion together. We just didn't have as good a turnout at those meetings. So how do we kind of monitor that?
Right. So I think that's a good question. So I think in terms of, I think we will have, and we did see that in the public meetings, there were people sitting down at tables having conversations, right? And so we will have it facilitated in a way that, there will be a facilitator there and people will start having those kind of conversations. It is very commonplace for people not to agree on a particular issue. And that's our job, is to find that kind of middle ground. So if somebody writes that they like that, I can guarantee you somebody else potentially will say, no, I don't like this. And then that lets us know that this is not, something that everybody completely agrees with within the town. And so then if for some reason, like, so for example, we heard a lot about certain roadways that needed certain intersections, right? Needed traffic lights. Now, typically, when you go through something to identify a traffic light, you have to go through a traffic study, you have to deal with the warrants, and then you're going to clearly have to deal with an outside agency, especially since some of these areas that were identified are New York State controlled roads. Instead of automatically saying, well, that can't possibly happen, or absolutely there needs to be traffic lights here, we started finding objectives as middle ground of like, that probably needs to be looked at, and that probably needs to have an additional conversation. So those are where, if for some reason very specific things get identified and there's differing opinions, maybe that means then there is probably an issue with that particular area or that particular location or that particular issue that needs further discussion, further study, or further investigations in order to come to some sort of conclusion. And that's what we would bring up in the comprehensive plan. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it does make sense. My concern was, like I said, when people are coming at different times, if they don't like an idea that was previously put on, can they remove it? Or can they make it?
No, they won't remove it, but they can add to it to say,
Okay.
I don't like this idea. Yeah.
Because that was some of the feedback about the sticky notes. Like, what if the sticky notes fall down? What if my idea is already up there? Is it more helpful to have 3 sticky notes with the same idea so they know there's more interest in it? Those kind of.
Right. And I think that's it. And I just want to take a moment to just note, it's not, none of the public input is basically like a vote. right? Or any sort of the majority rules. It really is based on, we just want to hear ideas and concepts and issues. And a lot of times, sometimes even just working with the public, because the public might not necessarily, just like as Larry mentioned or questioned earlier about, well, this is housekeeping. How does this relate to moving the comprehensive plan or the town forward? I know based on the technical needs that, in order to move zoning forward or land use forward, you need to look at those definitions. That might not be something that the public might understand. So if they bring up an issue, one of the solutions might be, let's look at the definitions in the zoning chapter. They wouldn't understand that that's the solution. They would be saying that this is the issue. And so it's our job to say is, okay, we hear the issues, we hear the concerns. This is what you need to do in order to start addressing some of those issues or concerns.
I think to address that comment and that's some of the feedback that we received, I think what we need to do a better job of is when people arrive, we need to give them the welcome paper, but then also have somebody from the MPV team or potentially from the steering committee, since this is content neutral, just saying like, here, welcome, here's how you move through, here's what's expected. You can't, and kind of like the rules, like you can't remove Post-it notes, like somebody's here with tape so that we can, if yours isn't sticking, we can fix it, like just so we set the stage up front when people enter, because that is super important given the open house format, that we want to make sure that no matter when somebody comes, they get the exact same message and instructions when they arrive. And depending on how busy it is, that might be tricky if lots of people are arriving at once. So we just want to make sure we have enough bodies at the entrance to make sure everybody's getting that touch when they come through. I think that would help alleviate some of these issues.
Right, and it would help maybe to have some volunteers as well. I mean, there were plenty of volunteers throughout the first public workshop, and we took photos of all the Post-its at the end. So I know there always is potentially a concern, but in reality, that's it doesn't usually happen that way. I mean, people will put their differing opinions, and that's pretty much it.
Okay. Yeah, the steering committee can definitely can help with that. What we just don't want to do is have steering committee members or any volunteers be facilitators for the actual content. But I think it would be okay for us to help with like welcoming. Is everybody okay with that? Okay, cool. Questions from committee members or comments just about the general format, how we keep it engaging and make sure people have a good experience? Kirsten?
I'm envisioning a bottleneck if there's just one easel with a vision statement on it, a cluster of people and jockeying for position to read this. Could we have hard copies on all the tables so people could sit down, digest it, then get up and do their Post-it notes or interact?
Yeah, absolutely. We can have, so we were planning to do printouts like we did last time, and we'll probably have more than one like vision statement with more than one blank, I think last time we had like one blank, poster for the Post-it notes. We'll probably have more than one for the vision statement. So that way people can sit and take their time and then put their comments in.
I think that would be great. Okay, other comments or questions from committee members? Okay, opening it up to the broader group. Jan?
Yeah, I thought, I'm thinking about hearing whether people are concerned about, my sticky note went away and stuff. I don't know if you're going to plan to put out all of the data that you collected, those pages of notes, but I went through and I said, oh, I remember reading that one on, oh, there's mine, or, oh, that's, so if somebody's worried about that, I don't know, is that all on
It's posted, it's all the raw data is posted to our website. That's a really good point. So we should let people know that they if they are concerned, they should go there and take a peek. And if it is missing, they absolutely let us know. Or if you, I think I am in the process of working with the webmaster to reorganize the website a little bit. Everything is still on there, but it'll get even more clear once we're done with that. There'll be like a specific tab that says past meetings, and it'll be really clear, and you can go in and kind of dig through all the raw data. So I think that's a
Because-
very helpful feature for everybody to be aware of.
Right, because I think
Full
I think that
transparency.
did happen in some of this where I saw that somebody had written one thing and I tried to do like a nuance on it on a different separate note, and they all did show up. Well, I'm not going to say they all did, but because I didn't read the whole thing. But as I read through, I do remember saying, oh, I saw that and I saw that. So if people are really concerned, I think pointing them, and I did see that some of the facilitators were picking up sticky notes that were either on top of each other or something and trying to organize it. So, but I think it's really important to make sure people feel like they got listened to and they got heard. And so the fact that it's on the website is great.
Right, and we also have all the photos. I made sure I took a high resolution,
Those are
so
on the website
you
too.
can actually zoom in to the photos of the Post-its and actually read the Post-it notes too.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah.
and that
Yeah.
was done right at the end of the meeting. We took photos of all of that.
Right.
And
And
when
then-
we post the goals and objectives, maybe it would be helpful to like for when these pages are posted, also a note that for all the past input, go to this part of the website and just a hyperlink that takes you there. Just make it really easy and user friendly.
And that's why one of the reason why we were thinking about actually having, now of course, having people actually write on the maps, because this way the concern about their Post-it notes disappearing, it's going to be on the maps, and there's going to be a facilitator there with the maps. So nobody's going to be able to like cross out somebody else's words, because there will be somebody there at those tables the whole entire time.
I can see you have expertise in this. I can imagine the maps getting hard to read and busy. I think.
Yeah, so we'll have other copies. We'll move
Right.
one
'Cause
copy into another. Yeah.
Yeah, because I find it easier to write on a Post-it rather than try to write on well, I guess it would, anyway, I'm confident in your experience on getting this done.
Yeah, I mean, and people will, I mean, the first round of maps, we even had just maps for people's information, and then people started writing their thoughts right then and there. And that was fine too, because then we just took those and we brought them into where they fit into the categories. So.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I see Mark has to leave early. That's fine. No problem, Mark. Dan, go ahead.
I'm just curious, you're gonna have people, give them an opportunity to sit down at a map and say, I think we should have this here. And how does that relate to the exercise of commenting on the goals and objectives, which are more sort of generic, and town-wide? Or what are you gonna do with those?
Right, so we are going to, and we still have to finalize how we want to do this. I mean, sometimes we've done where people have like little sticky notes, and they can say whether they like, I mean, not sticky notes, but like little dots, they can say they like particular goals or objectives. Another option is we could have, again, the goals or objectives listed on like a poster board, and then that blank poster where people can just write what they think or whether they like certain things or they have concerns with certain some of the goals and objectives. And then you have the map exercise where people identify very specific things that they would like to see. And I think you'll find that people they'll do both, right? They might go to the board where we're asking for comments on goals and objectives, and then they'll say, yes, because this intersection is an issue, or yes, I want like more like crosswalks in this particular location, or
Well, ultimately, this list of specific things for a given hamlet, those will be brought in as the raw data into the thing. Will they sort of be mapped against those goals and objectives and say, see, in Golden's Bridge, under this section of goals and objectives, the kinds of things that specifically we'd like to achieve are these. Is
Right,
that
so
sort of
what will
what's-
most likely happen in the comprehensive plan, that's a good question. So for example, let's just take one of the goals is protect, preserve, promote, and improve access and connectivity to Lewisboro's existing natural resources. And one of the first objectives is continue to be a good stewards to the town's preserves and ensure continued public access and use of those quality open spaces. So let's just say you're in like Lewisboro hamlet, and you want to start weighing in on some of the preserves within that area. And you say, oh, but this particular preserve needs additional like trails, or there's a bridge down, so that's where we can then identify underneath as part of the description of this particular objective, we're going to say specifically, the Lewisboro hamlet has these particular preserves that need to have better attention to them, or look at the trail networks. And so as everyone goes through and all the different hamlets, we'll start bringing in some of those hamlet specific objectives. We're not necessarily going to have only Golden's Bridge listed items and then only Lewisboro listed items. We're going to have them integrated within the goals and objectives so that the reader also understands that these goals and objectives are really town-wide. And I think that's one of the things that I heard talking from people from different hamlet areas, that they don't realize that a lot of them had very similar concerns or similar issues, but just the location is a little bit different. And so what we're trying to make everyone realize is that a lot of these goals and objectives are really town-wide, and how do they get applied to various aspects of the town? That's some of the details that we're bringing into the comprehensive plan.
If I could follow up, then the act of marking up the maps, will people be made aware that there's this kind of potential mapping here as you think about these things? They either might map to, or maybe they don't. And by virtue of putting this on the map, you may discover that it's not covered in one of those goals and objectives somehow. And that
Right.
flushes that out for you. And you might, and we'd all be, appraised of that to that.
Yes, exactly. So let's just say, for example, we didn't identify any of the lakes as having water quality issues, right? And we just said everything's great with your lakes. And now we're in like Walkabuck, and they say, wait a minute, you didn't hear about this study, or this particular Walkabuck Lake has issues that we need to look at. That would then bring to our attention that maybe another objective needs to be, specifically look at the water quality of the lakes.
So that kind of background might be, in some user-friendly way, might be nice for people in some real digestible way to have going into the meeting.
Yeah, I mean, we can try. We'll provide background information. I think the hard part is, I think as the steering committee, you're looking to develop a document. As a member of the public, they're just looking to give input, right? So I know you're looking at what the end goal is, but a lot of the people that are participating might not fully understand the whole comprehensive plan process, might have only paid attention to maybe snippets, maybe just heard about the meeting and come and want to provide input. So part of it is the members of the public, we can provide them information, but they don't need to worry so much about what ultimately is the end document. Their job is really focused on doing the exercises. And then ultimately our job is to bring those concepts, those ideas, and those concerns into the document. And then it is this committee's charge to review that document and make sure that you feel that we've captured basically the essence of the public feedback that you've heard throughout the process.
Charlene?
This is going back to something that you said that I thought about too. It's when somebody wants something, but they can't, like the traffic light, but they have to go through the whole rigmarole, going through the state, blah, 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 showing that there was 5 deaths. And then they get the the light. At what juncture do you curb the residents' enthusiasm for certain projects and give the restrictions on many of the things that they want to do? And I'm not saying that, I don't know at what juncture you're going to sort of put that out, because the expectation then is that everything that they're saying, goes into it, not the full thing, but goes into it. And there's some things that would never go in because you can't do them.
Right. So that's a good question. So I think it's more of, I think that's why the first meeting was big picture, what are issues, what are concerns, right? Now we're starting to drill down a little bit deeper and provide those goals and objectives. So when somebody's reviewing, they're going to start seeing it starting to get a little bit more narrowed. So if they start, let's say, for example, we'll go back to the intersections. If they start saying these particular intersections, fine. We can highlight those particular intersections and say, these are ones that have been identified as of concern. What we won't do is say they need a traffic light, right? Because we don't have that information. But we can say these are the intersections of concern and warrant potential additional discussions with Department of Transportation. And so right now we've narrowed it down to identifying some of the main corridors that have been of concern. And ironic, and it's no shocker that it's pretty much every state road in every hamlet area was identified. So we made sure that was brought in. Now, the next step is if people start really identifying very specific areas, in the next round, fine. If not, we'll still describe that those are the corridors that really need focus. And what we did here, though, so far is that of concern is really where you have a lot of community facilities, children potentially walking, and so those are the, around your hamlet areas where you have a lot of cars. So that's where we will identify, maybe a little bit more details or next steps. So there's still a lot to be gathered from the community. And I think you'll be surprised on, I was very surprised on how cohesive so many comments were throughout the process. There really wasn't this big, black, white, up, down kind of, response we received from the public.
No, but like sidewalks are a big issue in every municipality, and the cost and how it's charged. I mean, stuff like that I don't think is realized as to how it gets done and how expensive it may be. And I don't want to put the board in positions that, oh yeah, sidewalks are a good idea, we should do a study on it, which somewhat means that, oh, they do need sidewalks. You know what I mean? And stuff like that. And a lot of people talk about it and they're of one mind, and maybe it would be a good thing. But there is the financial aspect of it. So how do you curb their enthusiasm, basically?
Well, so we do, in our objectives, we are recommending you do a sidewalk, a priority sidewalk study, because there's many people said the same thing over and over again, especially from the high school down to the shopping center, that there should be considerations. And some of it is along your state roads. So that is something, and New York State has adopted the Complete Streets policy. So that is something that could be worked out or discussed. And so it's little, we're not saying put sidewalks throughout the whole entire town, but we heard it enough from the public that maybe it might warrant some sort of study or some sort of initial dialogue with New York State DOT on potentially adding some sidewalks in key locations, right? Not everywhere, but in key locations,
that would be great if you delineate that it's really a state issue and it's not.
Yes. Right.
But I think generically, Charlene, you got a point, which is just to say there could be some things which are popular, but maybe not immediately practical. And at some stage in the process, whether it be, before the final document is done, or maybe it's with, we have a subsequent stage, which is kind of like, year 2024 execution plan or whatever it might be, where we're laying out, okay, this is what we're going to do. And that's when it really gets fleshed out. But I think you had a good point. It just, at some point, we actually get down to specifics on that.
Right, and I think in the goals and objectives at the end, when you have the comprehensive plan, we will be identifying which ones are immediate, which ones are more short-term, which ones are long-term, right, in terms of implementation. And some of them might be something that, you know, there are some comprehensive plans that maybe you don't get to every particular goal or objective, but an opportunity, a development opportunity comes up where now all of a sudden you can say, you know what, we actually need sidewalks here. So if you're going to develop this particular, you know, shopping center again, we want to see sidewalks now, even though their sidewalks weren't there at one point in time.
Right.
John?
Yeah, I think some of the ones that we all want are things, so everybody in town wants better Wi-Fi service, let's say.
Right.
But we're in a bad position for that because we have a single flyer. So I think what you have to do is get the town board, you know, to have a process or an ongoing process and a strategy. How do they do that over time? And, you know,
Right. So I think, right. So in terms of like broadband, some of the objectives that we have right now is that you can continue working on that, or you continue working on the study, the cityscape study. We have
Yeah.
identified where broadband cellular infrastructure gaps exist within the town and develop a plan to reduce those gaps, including identifying funding, sources of funding, right? So that's an objective. You know, so we'll put an explanation as to that objective, but basically we're not saying none of in the comprehensive plan doesn't mandate anything. It basically says these are goals and objectives. So right, so they're recommendations. And then ultimately the town board will decide how to move forward and what funds to put towards. But what we can do is say, you know what, you might want to identify some additional funding mechanisms, or you might want to continue encouraging the town board to move forward with some of for example, the wireless master plan study. But ultimately, this is a document, don't forget, that the town board adopts. So if they're adopting this, they also agree with the recommendations and the goals, and they want to see, like, for example, that study continue participating in that study.
yeah, but I think we need to suggest other approaches. So, I mean, I think the solution is working with the state at the state level. You know, that study is nice, but it's not getting us anywhere. So I think we need to be a little more specific in terms of a strategic process.
Okay, I'm
Well,
gonna pause there just because we are kind of getting into like content details.
Right.
But in terms of bringing it back up to the high level, I think we do want to make it clear that all input is welcomed. And we want the town board and the steering committee, everybody wants to hear what people's desires are. But then at some point in the process, before we finalize the document, we do want to be clear and transparent about, like, when setting the priorities of what the recommendations are, that what's most realistic, what's low hanging fruit and can be done quickly and easily. Like you said, immediate priorities, what's longer term, and be honest and upfront with, like, there are real barriers here, and these are what the barriers are. So it's actually a really exciting opportunity to bring together everybody's feedback and then, like, bring everybody together in a collaborative discussion about how do we move forward, what's easy, what's hard, and how do we get there together. So I think if we focus in on that, and like that, I'm hearing the need for that collaborative discussion when we move from from round 2 of public meetings into round 3 of public meetings, that'll be something we really need to focus on.
Well, so I think round 3 of public meetings is really going to focus on your zoning changes, if you recall. So, and then you go, so basically round 2 of public meetings, the next round from the comprehensive plan would be the comprehensive plan public hearing. If the town wants to work in another round of public meetings in between that, you know, we can talk about that. But the third workshop is really going to focus on any potential zoning changes to get feedback on those aspects.
But the draft plan will be posted too in advance of the hearing, so people will have that.
Yes, and that's right. And the public hearing is usually that round 3 of, okay, now we have the goals, the objectives, now we have this, you know, more details. And does anybody have any other comments on the plan itself?
Okay, we definitely need to pick up on this conversation next time, but I think this is really really good food for thought for everybody to go into the documents themselves and kind of dig in and think about them in the context of everything we've talked about. And add your comments and questions and concerns, and we can kind of hopefully work through them a little bit between now and the next meeting. Another thing I heard that I want to suggest, hopefully this will help Valerie and your team in terms of saving you some hours too. I think that in terms of that welcome packet that people get when they enter the meeting, that we can also post online ahead of time. I think it would be really great if this group collaboratively, maybe Valerie, your team can like start it with bullet points and high level thoughts, but then this group can actually develop it together and workshop it. That way we can pull in all the feedback we heard, we can pull in, you know, sort of address concerns or comments. Like, since it's a guide on how to move through the meeting, it doesn't have to do with the content itself. It's really how do you interact with the content. I think we could all provide some really useful, at least editing and, you know, zhuzhing up and all that good stuff. So if everybody, I'm willing to take the lead on that, but if everybody would help contribute to that, I think that would be really great. And it would make it like a really robust document for people.
That's fine. I mean, I'm happy to collaborate or whatever you'd like to do that you think is going to be best for the community. Absolutely, we're happy to do so.
I think it would be great if you guys started, since you have a vision of how it's going to
Sure.
work, but you don't have to worry about full sentences. You can just bullet point it out and then we can flesh it out as necessary. Like the goal being, how do you move through this meeting? What are your options for moving through? How do we address people's concerns? That kind of thing. Okay, so moving to the next item on the agenda. I know there's probably more questions, more comments. Luckily, we can reconvene next month and pick back up on those. But yeah, I do want to encourage everybody to use the Google Documents and have that dialogue between meetings. That way we can keep things moving really nicely.
One thing I just want to get, Katie, before we move on, we want to get started on some of the mapping. So we just wanted to make sure everyone's comfortable with like we're going to have like Hamlet maps, and that everyone's comfortable with the general direction of where we're going with this particular workshop number 2 round.
Are we comfortable enough with the content that MPV has the okay to start printing maps and visual aids? Yes. Thumbs up. Okay. You're good to go. Thank you. Okay. Any other questions from you, Valerie, or for the team about this, what you need from us to move forward?
No, we'll finish up the details next meeting, and we'll get you revisions on a number of the other elements.
Awesome. Okay, so that next meeting, just by the way, everybody, is April 17th. Is that okay? That isn't a conflict with the town board, is it? I don't think so, but let's just double check while we're all together. So in terms of the dates for the next round of public meetings, I can bring that up here. So Valerie and her team put together dates that work for them on their end. And Kirsten is working behind the scenes to find out with the locations, are they available? Are they ADA compliant? How many people can they fit? That kind of thing. So once we have yeses from locations and we make sure that all the puzzle pieces fit together, we can go public with all the meeting information. But those dates are, I'm having trouble finding them. So let me.
I have them if you want me to.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Just read those out so everybody can hear them.
So they're May 20th for both a morning and afternoon session, June 3rd, which is another Saturday morning and afternoon session, June 10th, which is another Saturday morning and afternoon session, and then June 11th, which is a Sunday. The timing, we were thinking for morning sessions, 10:30 to 12:30. And then 2 to 4, these will be the Saturday ones. And then the June 11th is really focused on people that are not able to attend on Saturdays. And so we were thinking of either a 6:30 to 8:30 or a 7 to 9 time.
Yep, and we had really good presentation with the town board on March 13th. And I read those out to the town board, and there was some good discussion, and I think we got the go ahead that everybody was comfortable with that as proposed. So the only thing I think we need to work out is whether it's the 6:30 or 8:30 or 7 to 9 for this Sunday. But why don't we figure out location first, because there might be a lot of it is going to depend on venue and if there's conflicts with the venue. So we'll get back to everybody when Kirsten has some final answers about that in the coming weeks.
Right, and the Saturday times, I mean, we're already planning to be in the town the whole day, so if they need to slide, that's not a problem at all. We just thought, to try to capture people that, might have like early morning, like sports things, that they would still be able to come in the morning if they want to, and then also have time in the afternoon before it starts getting dinner time.
Yeah, we did get the okay. We got the okay from folks that should work with sports timing. Okay, so moving on to, let's do a quick vote. We need to approve the minutes from February. So I motion to approve the meeting minutes from our February meeting as submitted over email to the group ahead of time. So steering members, can I get Charlene seconding? All in favor, steering committee? Aye. Okay, great. The other thing, just want to look at our open action items here. I want to thank Charlene for doing the February 26th new resident social event, and John did the library volunteer fair and got us some additional volunteers for our outreach teams on March 4th. So coming out of the town board presentation on the 13th, I'm coordinating the open requests to the town board for assistance with things like reaching out to the school district and connecting with them there on advertising through school district channels, but also potentially having student volunteers help with paper flyering, connection to the firehouses, and connection to conversation with Parks and Rec about what else we can do with them to advertise and make sure that participants in their programs know about the comp plan. So that's all in the works, and I'm following up on those open things. Charlene and John, thank you in advance for coordinating the library program on April 22nd in person and April 26th virtually. So you are both coordinating with the library on that, and that's great. That'll be a really good opportunity for members of the public to kind of hear the process, how they can get involved, sort of some of the presentation stuff that we've done previously, just repackaged. And then John is handling some coordination with the older adults group through Parks and Rec. And we've got our volunteers from the outreach teams working on some outreach projects too. Everyone's really engaged and so generous with their time. So we're really happy there. And then I won't go over all the rest of them, but Valerie and your team, we're relying on you to keep an eye out for grant opportunities and let us know if you see any of those. Any questions? We only have 2 minutes, but any burning questions about action items specifically?
No, I did have a conversation with someone from the Department of State the other day about grant opportunities. So as soon as they were sending me some information, as soon as I get that, some of it had to do with lakes, some of it had to do with water, who knows what else. So I will keep you guys posted.
Okay.
Yeah,
Thank
I
you.
remember from the first year, the CFA stuff is usually in by July. I don't know whether we want to go down that path or not. I think we have a couple of strikes against us if you look at the criteria, but the CFA grants are due in July.
That's a good question. If you could make a note of that, Valerie, and think about if you could give us some guidance on whether we should reapply or not, that would be really helpful.
Sure.
Okay, thank you so much, everybody. It was very important for me to get us done on time tonight since we went over last time. So I will, with that, I just encourage everybody, look at your email and at those, that Google Drive has everything in it. If you have any questions, can't find something, can't access it, feel free to reach out anytime. And I think we can do some good workshopping behind the scenes between now and next meeting. But otherwise, we will finalize everything next meeting, and by then we should have meeting dates nailed down and we can get a plan for posting everything. And the advertising will have to be underway by then for the next round. So lots of good stuff all moving forward. So thank you all for your involvement. Stay involved. And if you want to help with anything else that you don't currently have your hands on, just let me know. All right. Thank you so much, everybody. I motion to adjourn.
Second.
Charlene second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Thanks so much, everybody. Have a great night.